ask him to say a few words before Dr. Esrailian. We have our, with the Consul General of Greece, Mr. Karachalios. And so you will enjoy this. We don't want to talk any longer. Your Eminence, if you would just give a greeting, and then we'll get Dr. Esrailian. You have a program already.
Whenever I come to the cathedral, I have to improvise my own schedule to accommodate things, which is great. I don't mind, especially in events like this one here tonight, this afternoon. I was planning to see the movie myself, not here, but out in the movie theaters, but I did not have the chance. Yet, events and the heritage that we are sharing, people of God, and the experience that they are a historical fact, that nobody can really make it otherwise. No matter how much they try to distort history, the facts are facts. And I believe that this movie, for what they tell me, I have not seen it yet, it has the historical fact of a very terrible events in the history of a nation, of peoples, God-fearing people, who are very close to our own Greek Orthodox faithful throughout the world. So I'm sure that those people who are going to speak after me, they will probably underline many of those historical facts that the movie is depicting. It is a movie, it is not a history channel movie, it's a movie. So it has a plot, however, I believe, that says a great deal about those events that took place about a century and some years ago, in a place that many of you are hailing from both Greeks and Armenians and other ethnicities as well. I just met the young man who's going to be the MC, a young actor from Greece that seems to be very engaged the younger generations who come either from Greece or from other places, and to instill in them the message that hopefully this movie is going to give about what is humanity. It does not have a color, it does not have an ethnicity, it does not have a sex. Humanity has as its core value the moral, the ethical, the thing to do in the right way, no matter who you are and what you are. Something that today, dangerously enough, we're going away from it in our country. Maybe this movie will give us a little bit more a shot in the arm, wake us up a little bit more, to become more sensitive. I appreciate the fact that you give me this opportunity to speak to you, even for a few minutes. And I hope that you're going to enjoy the movie and you're going to come out of here with one or two questions or statements in your head, and more importantly in your heart, about how we will behave as people of faith, people of the human race. Because that is the most important question that we have to answer. It's not who did to whom, as much as what happened and why. Thank you so much again. May God bless you, and I hope that you have a great success. And who is now? This is the young man that I was talking about. Please take over.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is here today at the 95th anniversary of the Asia Minor Catastrophe, and I took this opportunity to be here among you, invited. It's a great joy that I present to you Mr. Ioannis Fidanakis, who's the Executive Director of the American Hellenic Council, who is setting up the event. Mr. Ioannis Fidanakis, please.
I'll keep my words short, but I'd like to welcome you all here to today's event for our commemoration of what happened to our ancestors in Asia Minor. I'd also like to note our co-hosts for today, the Armenian Assembly of America, the Federation of Hellenic Societies of Southern California, and the Huffington Center. And also thank our co-sponsors, the Armenian National Committee of America Western Region, the SAFO Center, the Greek Research Center, as well as the American Jewish Committee. Thank you all for being here in attendance today. I hope you enjoy the program and the movie, and I'll allow Panos to continue. And again, thank you very much for all being here.
There are going to be many important people saying important things today, so I'm going to keep my words short. As a member of the artist world, the only thing I have to add to what is happening today is that recognizing atrocities of war and the Armenian genocide especially is not a duty of the Greeks or the Armenians or the Syrian people. It is our duty as humans. And I'm sure art is not going to resolve problems, but it's going to point them out. And today that you are here, it's a big step of becoming a better version of our human race. That's the only thing I'm gonna say. I'm sure you're gonna enjoy the movie. It's our great pleasure that we have today with us here, Mr. Gregory Karahalios, the Greek Consul General. The stage is yours. Thanks so much.
Good afternoon. There are approximately 100 years already passed since the Ottoman first and then the Turkish authorities decided that non-Muslim residents of the Ottoman Empire were dangerous for the existence of the empire, and therefore they decided to eliminate them. Of course, even in previous centuries, Turkish authorities made a lot of promises to Christian, especially Christian and Jewish, but especially Christian residents of their empire, that they will take measures in favor of their, that they will protect them, they will somehow help them to remain and to maintain their own identities. But they never maintain all these promises. I can tell you about the Tanzimat, which was the last reform by the Sultan Abdul Hamid in 1878. But that was again just promises and nothing else. So at the beginning of the 20th century, the New Turks, which was a government that a new government made of military officers decided to start the Armenian genocide. The Armenians were the first to be eliminated. It all started in 1915, although, as I said, even in the 19th century there were a lot of other persecutions and crimes against Christian minorities in Turkey. It started in 1915 with the Armenians, it continued with the Greeks later, and the Assyrians, of course. All these three ethnic and religious minorities should be eliminated according to the Turkish authorities. And that was a genocide because it was not just a crime. They just wanted to eliminate everyone, to kill everybody. We have later in the history of mankind, we have some more fresh negative experience, like the Nazis, what they did to the Jews during the Second World War and later. We have also more recently similar crimes in Cambodia with Pol Pot regime, the Stalinists during the the 30s against Ukraine. And more recently, today we have the persecution in Myanmar of this small minority, the Rohingyas, what they are practically persecuted. The difference is all these crimes are part of the darkest pages of human history. But the difference is that many countries, they acknowledge their what they did in the past. They ask for forgiveness and they try to move forward as members of the civilized international community. Unfortunately, Turkey is still not a part of those countries. Turkish government, even today, denies all these facts, all these events that you can easily find in every book or even in the internet. For them, never happened, or it happened in a very smaller scale. So I hope that one day history will not be written with the blood and the tears of the weak and the innocent. But since that day probably is a little bit far, what we can do is to continue to remember all these victims of the past, no matter if they are Armenians, Greeks, or of any other nationality, and prepare always ourselves in order to not to be found in the same conditions. To all these victims, we just can say today that we will not forget them, and may God be with them all the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your words, Mr. Karahalios. Bear with me for a second. I would like to introduce many important people that are honoring us with their attendance today. Of course, Gregor Karahalios, Greek Consul General of Los Angeles, Arnela Zakarian, Consul of the Republic of Armenia, Artasis Ardi Kazakyan, thrice elected City Clerk of the City of Glendale, California, Mihran Tumajan, Western Region Director of the Armenian Assembly of America, Viken Pakradumi, Board Member of the American National Committee of America Western Region, Ramon Taksh, President of the Assyrian American Association of Southern California, John Cariel, Vice President of the Assyrian American Association of Southern California, Siamak Kordestani, Assistant Director of the American Jewish Committee, Annie Lieber, the American Jewish Committee's Interreligious and Intercommunity Committee Co-Chair, Dan Lieber, Regional Board Member of the American Jewish Committee, Sabri Atman, Director of the Seifo Center, Dr. Eric Esrailian, Executive Producer of The Promise, Mrs. Bonnie Abaunza of Survival Pictures, the production company that brings us The Promise, David William Lazar, President of the American Metropolitan Mesopotamian Organization, and George Maragoluf from the Assyrian Today TV network. A genocide. A government introducing its officials to kill all the members of an ethnic group. It has to be said as it is. It was a genocide. Before our first speaker, please bear with me for honoring the victims of the genocide by paying them a moment of silence. It's with great honor I introduce you our first speaker, Dr. Jim Dimitriou.
Good morning, all. It gives me a great deal of pleasure to see a unification of spirit, a unification of goals, and to commemorate the memories of those that sacrificed so much from our common heritage, from our common background, and to look forward to a time period that we have much more to gain by working together, much more to wake up the world to a common plight that took place. What began 102 years ago on April 24th, 1915, when the three pashas collected all the intellectuals from Constantinople, that led to and grew into what is the first ethnic cleansing and genocide of the 20th century, which is agreed to and maintained by the United Nations as the definition of ethnic cleansing and genocide. And to this day, it's maintained as that and continued. And that continued until the Great Fire of Smyrna that took place in September of 1922 that started, remember, we started the ethnic cleansing with the Ottomans, with the three pashas. But it was the modern government of Turkey. It was a government of Mustafa Kemal, and who led the charge, whose cavalry went into the city, who set the fires, who burned out the homes of the Armenians and of the Greeks, not accidentally, but with great vengeance, that not only burned the city, not only burned the inhabitants, but drove the others into the sea, while 21 warships, American, British, French, Italian, and Japanese, sat there as people drowned, as babies were killed, as those were thrown in the water to escape the flames, that extinguished our history, that had a history going back from ancient times, a history of the 7 churches of Asia Minor that was going to be extinguished, that took the Metropolitan Chrysostomos out of the cathedral into the offices and then thrown into the crowd and told, do what he deserves. What they did to him was horrendous. They took him into a barbershop and pulled his beard out. They gouged his eyes out, carved his ears and nose out, and threw him to the crowd that dragged him through the streets. This was the memory of the horrendous losses of that time. They talk about perhaps 100,000 that had died, not of the 40,000 that were marched into the desert to their death, not of those that drowned and left prior. We're talking about all the Levantines, all of the Armenians, all of the Greeks that shared that history, that shared that experience of seeing their heritage, their culture, their religion extinguished in their bloody eyes in front of them. This was a time period of great hardships. This was a time period that saw the Greeks of Pondos, of Trapezonda, of my family's island of Mamara that was taken en masse in 1915 off the island into Asia Minor, and where more than half perished. My family luckily was one on the last ship that made it out. Our other relatives did not. Half were lost in that time. We share a heritage of remembrance that we need to define. And to this day, we're still trying to define it in Greek textbooks. We're still trying to define it in the Greek parliament of a government that doesn't want to use the term genocide. How can that possibly be? When the United Nations uses it, when Adolf Hitler even used it and said, after all, who remembers the Armenians before the Holocaust? When we have an ethnic cleansing, when we have an effort to extinguish the people, the religion, the culture, it is a time period for humanity to stand up, for all of us to stand together. It's a time period that was recorded by Henry Morgenthau, the American ambassador, that validated the events that took place there at the time. It was validated by George Horton, the American Consul General from Smyrna at the time, that stayed and evacuated the Americans and tried to evacuate some of the Greeks, but was one of the last to leave. Whose daughter I had the good fortune of meeting and interviewing, and on my trips to Greece with students, had her speak to them. Nancy Horton, you may know, spent the rest of her life at 102 in Vula, never left Greece, and left whatever family fortune to the Ahepa Hospital in Thessaloniki as a remembrance to her father and the goodwill that he did. And you can imagine the experience my students felt with a living history of someone that was there, someone that experienced that. And that's what we have to do as a group, is remember our history, commemorate Smyrna, have a memorial in our churches, continue to remember those historical events for our children. And all the students that I've taken to Greece, 2,900, there is a yearning for those students to know their background, to know their history. It's up to us to give them that history, to remember that, so they have a living connection to it. They thirst for it. They want it. Don't lament that the Greek language is being lost and all we do is have blendies and dancing. But look at how we can extend this and what programs we can offer. We shouldn't be taking 10, 15, 20, 100 students, but 1,000 students a year. Let's teach them in the schools our culture, our history, our religion, but most of all, our background and what we've learned and what we want to share, because they want to learn. They have a desire for that. It's up to us to work together. It's up to us to work in the American Hellenic Council, in the new federation, in our sister organizations from Anka and the Assyrians and others. It's time for us to work in commonality to remember that things just don't go away. What started in 1915 was ignored by the world. There was a glimmer that some would take notice in Smyrna, and when Smyrna took place, before the eyes of the Allies, unfortunately, when the French and Italians replenished the Turkish forces and drove not only the Greek army in the sea, but the entire city. That was an outrageous event that contributed to the ethnic cleansing, while the ships watched in wait without helping. That can't be, and that has to be remembered. It has to be shared. And it's up to us to keep that history alive. It's up to us to look to a future. And we have to look at this because it's something that we can gain from. The Promise is a wonderful film. It's a film that I have seen more than one occasion. I've had the opportunity of taking students to it. I've taken 2 groups of 50 students and found that the theater owner gave me the tickets because he thought they should see it. And that's something we all should do, and then continue. It's a long story. It's a story that we should share, but I want to end with you with the words of George Horton, of the Consul General, from his famous book and the poem that he wrote, The Martyred City. Glory and queen of island sea was Smyrna, the beautiful city, and fairest pearl of the Orient she, O Smyrna, the beautiful city. Heiress of countless storied ages, mother of poets, saints, and sages, was Smyrna, the beautiful city. One of the ancient glorious 7 was Smyrna, the sacred city, whose candles all were alight in heaven, O Smyrna, the sacred city. One of the 7 hopes and desires, one of the 7 holy fires, was Smyrna, the sacred city. And 6 fared out in long ago, O Smyrna, the Christian city. But hers shone on the constant glow, O Smyrna, the Christian city. The others died down and passed, but hers gleamed until yesterday, O Smyrna, the Christian city. Silent and dead were our church bell ringers of Smyrna, that Christian city. The music silent and dead singers of Smyrna, the happy city. And her maidens, pearls of the island seas, are gone from the marble palaces. A Smyrna enchanting city, she is dead and rots by the Orient's gaze, does Smyrna, the murdered city. Her artisans gone, her streets desolate, O Smyrna, the murdered city. Her children made orphans, widows, her wives gone, while under her stones the foul rat thrives, O Smyrna, the murdered city. They crowned with a halo her bishop there, in Smyrna, the martyred city. Those disabled, whose blood was long white and white hair, O Smyrna, the martyred city. So she kept the faith in Christendom, from Polycarp to Saint Chrysostom, did Smyrna, the glorified city. This man lived this. He was not Greek. He was there. He cherished it. He passed it on. His daughter carried it. We have to carry it. It has not ended. What happened to the Armenians in 1915, to Smyrna in 1922, continued later in 1955 in Constantinople and Kristallnacht, when they came in and sacked, burned, and drove the Greeks of Constantinople out, that once thrived with 250,000 that we don't even have 2,000 today. That drove again in 1964 yet another attack that led to the last of my relatives leaving. This was a time of great sacrifice, but we must not forget. We must cherish those memories and look to events like this, to movies, to share a history, but we have to carry that flame. We have to relight it and look at that history and share it with our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dimitriou, so much. It is true, we have to enlighten our background and our culture, and as I am standing among you, I would say, please invest your time, your efforts, your hearts, and your money, of course, into our cultural background, in our festivals, in our cultural festivals that are going to ignite that flame, introducing our culture. That is the only way. It's not my problem. It's not my problem what happened to the Assyrians, to the Greeks, or to the Armenians, or to the American. I don't know. It is our problem. So invest in cultural festivals, concerts, theater, open talks, documentaries, you name it. Our next speaker is Dr. Eric Esrailian. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Panos. And thank you to all of you. It's my tremendous, sincere honor to be here with all of you today. I feel like I'm in a room full of relatives because of how close we are as a community. This church is very important to our family because we have such dear friends, including Father John Bacchus, who's always welcomed us into this church and this community, because I truly feel like Greeks, Armenians, Assyrians, because of the shared history that you've heard about today, have always felt connected. And I'm also honored to hear about the Jewish community supporting this event, because now I truly do feel that through these shared tragedies, we can actually turn things into a positive by trying to prevent atrocities in the world. I have a few thank yous, so please bear with me. Again, I want to thank the Greek, Assyrian, Armenian, of course, and Jewish communities for sponsoring this event, coming together with all of the different organizations that Panos mentioned. It's truly an opportunity for us to have strength in numbers. And this is really, hopefully, the beginning. Of course, we've been dealing with this for over 100 years, but I think that our ability to become more organized, to join forces, to be tactical in terms of how we try to share stories, using our film as perhaps one example, and hopefully it'll stimulate ideas for other people to make films about the Greek history, Assyrian history. I think there are so many stories, and I think as you watch the film, you will probably see some of your own family story in the film, in one way or another. You'll say that that happened to my great-grandfather in Constantinople, whether you're Greek or Assyrian, etc. And as the great-grandson of genocide survivors from what was known as, Constantinople for sure. My great-grandmother was from an area called Van, which we like to think of as historic Armenia, but now it's part of Eastern Turkey. But I feel very honored to be here with all of you. I want to give a special thanks also to Jay Landers and Despina Landers. I don't know if they're still here, but there they are. Okay. Both, and Sophia Landers. Let's not forget Sophia. But they are really part of our extended family, and they've always connected us to the Greek community here in Los Angeles, and they've worked so hard also on our film. And Jay continues to work literally, as far as a few minutes ago, for many aspects of the film, particularly the music. And we really feel connected to the community thanks to the Landers family. Vanya Banza is also here. I want to thank Vanya because she's been helping to organize our social impact campaign with all of the groups that you heard about earlier today. You might not be aware, but all of the proceeds from this film that come back to the production company are being donated to charity. That was through the generosity of Kirk Kerkorian. So all of this would not be possible if it were not for the generosity of a humble and honorable philanthropist. And this was truly his vision. The film was his vision. The manner in which we made the film, incorporating the love story, using some of the old-fashioned storytelling, which hopefully will remind you of films that you grew up with or have seen, because he wanted a film that would be a throwback, that it would be a reminder to the films of his era when he was a studio owner or when he watched movies like Casablanca or Dr. Zhivago. But at the same time, because there has never been a major Hollywood film about the Armenian genocide, we had very specific things that we wanted to reflect. We wanted to reflect life in Constantinople prior to genocide. We wanted to reflect life in the villages outside of Constantinople, which hopefully we'll try to convey. And it's hard to do in 2 hours. So it's not meant to be the once and for all definitive discussion, but hopefully the beginning of such a discussion for all of our communities to be able to join forces together. And I apologize that we can't stay. My family, I want to thank them too for supporting me throughout this journey over the last 7 years. But we actually have a documentary coming out in November called Intent to Destroy, which is I think the educational complement to this film. And we'll help make everyone aware of when that will be screening in Los Angeles as well, but I have some meetings regarding that. But I did not want to miss this today because I'm so honored that you invited us. I just want to mention a couple more things, and then I will be quiet because I know you're eager to see the film. We have, as I mentioned before, the philanthropic potential of the film is something that's unprecedented. And we always knew, and Mr. Kerkorian knew, there would be commercial challenges, that studios would not be interested, that it would be very difficult to combat the Turkish denial campaign, which is extremely powerful. But we had to start somewhere, and Mr. Kerkorian was committed to doing that, and he was driven, and he basically said, no matter what happens, you don't stop. And I think for us, we know that there will be a long life for the film because of communities like this, because of opportunities to get together, to have conversations, to never forget. And I think that the most important thing for me is that all of these communities work together, because what the denialists try to do is separate these things out. These events are linked forever. What happened to Greeks in Smyrna or throughout the history of the Ottoman Empire is not disconnected from what happened to Armenians or Assyrians. I mean, Christian populations were essentially cleansed from that region, and it's been a template for what has happened in other parts of the world, and you heard about all the other unfortunate atrocities in the world. As I say to people, in 2017, the people that continue these types of campaigns are not using more sophisticated technology. It's the same type of approach, dehumanizing a minority group and then trying to wipe them off the face of the earth. And we can't allow that to happen. We have started also the Promise Institute for Human Rights at UCLA. It's the first human rights institute of its kind in the Western United States. And all of the proceeds, as I said, of the film are being given to charitable organizations such as that. And one thing that's important for me to mention, at the end of the film, there's a song by Chris Cornell. And Chris Cornell and his wife Vicky were members of this community. He sadly passed away, and he's not with us any longer. He passed away in May. But he wrote this he wrote this song and performed it specifically for this film. He felt very connected to the Armenian community because of his involvement in the Greek community. And I really hope that you take a few minutes at the end of the film just to listen to the song before we close it out, because it's very important as a potential song that can inspire all of us to never forget. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope you
for what is bothering the world and our souls. Thank you, Mr. Karahali, for being here. Thank you, Mr. Dimitriou. Thank you so much, Mr. Esrailian. Thank you. So, with no further ado, enjoy The Promise by Terry George.